Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining our WiMSA webinar today. For those who don't know me, my name is 𝗘𝘁𝘀𝗸𝗂𝗲, and I'm a WiMSA committee member and also a senior chemist at 𝗘𝘵𝘂𝗶𝘂. And I'm very pleased to be facilitating this session today. So this is one of our first new webinar series where we are partnering with SafetyCloud, the nationwide occupational health and safety environmental training experts. So I'm sure the name gives it away. They know what they're doing. And I am pleased to be joined today by Chantal Gray, who is the MD of SafetyCloud, who will be assisting me with steering this event and imparting knowledge to all our attendees. Welcome, Chantal, and thank you so much to SafetyCloud for partnering with us for this webinar series. We will hear from Chantal later on during the program. For the moment, we do have quite a bit to get through, and would appreciate it if throughout the session, everyone puts their questions and comments in the chat. Today's session is going to be very informative. It's a discussion. We will explore on how to help the mining operation operate safer for everyone, so that everyone goes back home safe. I'm sure that's what we want at the end of the day. And we are very, very fortunate to have a wonderful panel of speakers who will be sharing their insights with us today. And as I've mentioned before, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. First and foremost, without wasting time, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, who will be speaking on the best practices for hosting and for fostering a strong safety culture among all employees. So our first panelist for today is Lindy Scott. Lindy, who is a founder and CEO of 𝗵𝘂𝗶𝗴, the health and safety communication platform. I'm sure, like I said before, the name gives it away. They know what they're doing. So Lindy's company, which is 𝗵𝘂𝗶𝗴, was founded in 2020, is a health and safety communication software platform used by hundreds of innovative safety professionals in the mining and large labor industries. Prior to this, she served at Health and Safety Dialogue Company as a creative director, where she focused on implementing safety culture programs. Linda's vision is to save lives through creativity in the workplace. She believes that a safe work environment will have a ripple effect on communities, people, and our economy. Linda's defining career experiences include: one, she became among the 2022, yes, Male and Guardian Top Young South Africans in the category of mining and manufacturing for her work at 𝗵𝘂𝗶𝗴, and then an OSH research trip across Canada, and winning the AfriSafe Shining Star Award in 2021. In addition to a health and safety experience, she boasts experience and qualifications in creative, media and marketing and communication fields. She also champions female entrepreneurship and design thinking to inspire the next generation. With that being said, Lindy will be talking to us, as I've mentioned before, on best practices for fostering a strong safety culture among all employees. Welcome, Lindy, and over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And thank you to all the people who've joined us today. So as mentioned, my background is in creativity. So the way we look at health and safety really is from that foundation. So when I'm not going to talk, there's quite a few of us talking today, so I'm really going to just focus in on the best practices for fostering a safe safety culture. So there's three things that I'm going to discuss. The first one being what we all need to do. And it sounds so obvious until you actually put it in practice. And the first one is we need to do a communication audit and a language audit of just what safety culture means. If we think about it in this webinar today, if you just take a moment to think about what does safety culture mean, there's, I believe 29 of us, we may all have a differing understanding. Some people might think it's only operations problem, only if you're on the front lines, it's your problem. Some are like, oh, I'm an engineer, it may not be my problem. But the reality is it is everybody's responsibility and everybody's concern. But that definition of what is safety culture is often something we just take for granted. People know. So one of the big things that happens with safety culture is it can be quite a debated and across the globe, quite a contentious topic. Many companies say we shouldn't isolate it out and have it as the word safety culture. It should just be part of our everyday culture. There are constant debates. If you post something on LinkedIn, the entire safety community, often if you read through the chats, there is just conflict and discourse around it. But this doesn't mean we don't want to bring a safe work practice into our workplace. So for me, the number one tip is to always do a communication audit. When you say safety culture, what does that mean? What does that mean to the front lines? What does that mean to leadership? And make sure that you all have the same definition. In South Africa, we are working across different languages. So this isn't even about a language understanding. It's just about a definition understanding. There's a gentleman called 𝗏𝗂𝗏 who is quite a guru in health and safety. And one of his tips and one of his sayings is the first rule of safety culture is don't talk about safety culture. So it might sound quite counterintuitive, especially when we look at the title of this topic. And I'm by no way saying we don't need it and it's not required. But sometimes when we highlight it and make it something different, we often can struggle to really implement it. So number one, have a language audit. Check the way we talk about it. Make sure that everyone is aligned of who it is. Because even though we might not have the same definition, we all can experience it and you can all feel when a culture is good, bad, and what's really happening on the ground. The second tip I have is to always build trust. So building trust is quite difficult in safety, especially when there's accidents can happen, things can go wrong, and people can die. This is not an easy topic. Health and safety is quite a tough topic. Often my friends say to me, like, how have you ended up in this sector? And you're like, because it's not at all what people imagine. Some days are really, really hard. It's tough things to talk about. But unless you're building that trust internally in your workplaces where people feel safe enough and to have that psychological safety to raise their hand and say, I've noticed something seeming strange. It's about knowing when to raise your hand, because error is normal. Error will always happen, but it's about having that trust within a workplace that you're able to welcome bad news. So one of the big concepts we use and we try to preach is that you can't fix a secret. And it's a fundamental thing in building a good culture is you have to be able to welcome that good and bad news, and how you treat and respond to workers who bring that message, which is often bad news, how you respond. So one of the big things that we look at under 𝗏𝗄𝗏, which is the human and organizational performance, is if you keep shooting the messenger, you're just not going to get any more messengers. So the messages will still be there. So building that trust is critical, and making sure that people are able to come to you and to come with worker-led solutions. So something we've noticed a lot when trying to build culture, especially with our safety professionals, is they are looking to do great change. They're the first ones to raise their hands and want to build that culture. But what we find is operationally, sometimes the fundamental thing they don't always have access to is budget. So whether they're wanting to bring in VR goggles, new training programs, a software like 𝗵𝗂𝗏, activations, awareness programs, often the budget is something that they're not given, and they have to fight long and hard to get it. So one of the big things we always recommend is make sure that safety culture is budgeted for, that there is some money available to really bring this topic to the forefront, because we don't want our safety professionals or our leaders or our frontline managers doing it with one hand behind their back, because there's this big thing where safety gets seen as a cost center. And how do we flip that and make safety seen more as a strategic priority? If we are safe and we do our work correctly, this can help our production. So building that trust and reframing how we see safety is a huge thing in building that culture across the board. The third point that I would like to put forward is that you need to encourage participation, and remember that safety is about humans. It's about human life, human egos, human morale, human good days, bad days. So if we look at ISO 45001, which is the first international standard, and I know there's lots of courses around it, and the mining sector has the Mining Act, which also has a lot of these best practices in, which is all around that worker and leadership participation. So how do you get that insight and get worker-led insights. Our workers are the ones who live these jobs every single day. They live the SOPs. They know what is good, what's bad, what's a strange thing on paper. And it's not about punishing people who may find a workaround. It's about understanding, could that workaround be leading improvements, and how do we learn from the front lines? So one of the approaches we use to really build that participation is creativity, and that can be really, really small tactics. It doesn't have to be huge and expensive things. It's just through small creative ways that we can really start to embed participation, get people's insight, get their thoughts on different topics. And we really need to try and change the tone of safety. Safety has a reputation of being dull and uninspiring, and here comes the blue light police, we're going to be in trouble. We need to change that whole way that safety is viewed in companies, and that all happens through action, through the way we behave, the way we lead, the way we encourage that dialogue. So we need to be mindful of all the touch points we have. So that means from our inductions, from the first day we've been brought onto site, how is safety communicated in our inductions? Is there room for questions? How are our awareness campaigns going? And does this content look like it's been made for us, or does it look like it was just put together quite quickly on a PowerPoint presentation, just there to tick a box? I imagine all of us here have got a call from our bank. And when you hear them phone you, they say, "Hi, this is Nedbank, Standard Bank phoning. This is an authorized service provider. These calls will be recorded, blah, blah, blah." We've all heard that. And you can tell that that is not a genuine conversation. That is ticking a box. And as humans, we want people to speak to us as humans. So safety, yes, compliance, we need to communicate. We need to do toolbox talks, but there's a way and a tone in which we can do that much better. Nobody wants to hear or be spoken to like they are getting the tick box of the bank phoning them. And just be mindful, every time you are starting to talk, they say, "Do I sound like the bank?" And you don't want to sound like the bank. You want to sound like a human, speaking to people who wake up every day looking to do a good job, providing for their loved ones, wanting to climb the corporate ladder. Everyone's got goals and ambitions, and nobody comes to work to be unsafe and try and break the rules. So it's really about a slow journey and really building that trust. So something we always do just when we meet a client is actually, even if we don't need to go, I always go to the bathroom to just check what's happening, because what happens in the bathroom can often give you quite a big sense around the language and the communication that happens. So I suggest you all to do the same. And just look when you see signs that like this, we expect you to clean the toilet, respect those who use the bathroom after you. Just that type of tone and language, you can see, you can start to pick up what is happening behind closed doors. Is the bathroom clean? Is there toilet paper? Is there soap? Is there things that are needed for general hygiene? And for me, this is always a touch point. So whenever we go to a client, whether it's a massive multinational state-of-the-art sand and building, or we're on site, the bathroom does always give you a good sense of what's happening. It's such a small little culture check just for you to get a sense of where it is. And that talks about all those touch points. People are on our minds, in our workplaces every day. We need to think about the entire system and how that human interacts with it. So yeah, my big thing is the three. So yeah, to summarize, the three things we need to do is have a language audit, make sure we all have the same language, same understanding, build trust, welcome bad news, good news, and work through it. And then encourage participation, because we are all humans and we all do want to get home safe every day. So I think that was 7 minutes, I hope. Don't know, I didn't time myself. The end.
Thank you, Lindy. I also didn't time you, so I don't know if it was 7 minutes or not. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Just one question before I move on to the next speaker. You mentioned the issue of having a budget for safety, right, and promoting that culture. But right now, with the South African market, the mining market in general, everyone is cutting down. And I'm sure one of the places that everyone would like to cut down is when it comes to safety, because everyone wants to push production so they can have more metal going out. So how do we then bring leadership to come into the party to say, this is how we can best do it, save the costs, but at the same time, ensure that the safety of our employees is taken care of?
The costing debate is always quite an interesting one. And this is where safety professionals, HR professionals, we can often think creatively, because you don't often need to outspend to outthink. So that's a quote by one of our investors, who always says, you just need to be smart with the money you have. The reality is, though, we are talking to large labor, and there will always be a cost. So we're busy currently with a project that's looking at reflective stickers. There's over 50,000 workers on site. So even if you get the price down to R2, there is still a cost, but it's about investing in people as well. Because sometimes you need to look at that whole budget and divide it by how many people you have, and say, to implement this program, to implement this training, to implement this awareness campaign is actually only going to end up costing me R20 a head. And if we don't have R20, that's a very sad reality. But then we need to keep thinking of ways to get that message out at a cheaper way. And that's why we need to invest in our safety professionals, in our teams, because there's a lot of free resources out there. There's AI now, there's all sorts of ways you can make your own videos, you can make your own content. But if you don't think about the person and the message first, then you're wasting your money, whether you've spent R10 or R1 million or 10 million rand. So I think it's really just about understanding that there is an investment, whether that's in time or in cash, but we do need to actually invest in people, and working with budgets or without budgets doesn't need to be an excuse to having good awareness campaigns, because you really can put them together very smartly without breaking the bank, but at the same time making sure that you have cared and you've really thought about that message.
No, thank you so much, Lindy. That was very insightful. No need to outspend to outthink. Yeah. I like that phrase. I'll now introduce our next speaker, Sharon Josop, who is a Superintendent Training at Beeshoek Mine, Assmang Beeshoek. Sharon started a mining career in 2006 at Black Mountain Mine in the Northern Cape as a plant operator. She worked at different sections on the flotation plant, crusher, filter press, SO2 plant, the weighbridge, and etc. In 2008, she started the training center as a plant instructor, where she was responsible for technical training on site. In 2010, she moved to Beeshoek Iron Ore Mine as an assistant training officer metallurgy, where her responsibilities included technical training on employees via classroom and practical training. She received scope accreditation from MQA as moderator and assessor. In 2012, she moved to Khumani Iron Ore Mine as a training officer metallurgy, where she was responsible for plant and sampling training. In her current role as Superintendent Training at Beeshoek Mine since 2018. She is responsible for technical training, overseeing engineering, metallurgy, mining, and induction training on mine, as well as contingent worker process. Sharon will be speaking to us today on implementing effective safety training programs and continuous improvement initiatives. Over to you, Sharon.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, I would also just have a couple of points that I would like to speak about. We can go on for days and days speaking about training and safety related. And as Lindy indicated, some of my points are most similar to hers. But yeah, most importantly, training is very important, especially when it comes to safety. Many, I've seen it throughout the years. Myself, even when I was a plant operator, you get afraid when you see the safety guys in the plant areas, and then you would immediately think, okay, why are they here now? They're gonna come and catch me out or ask me difficult questions. So yeah, people in general do have a fear of safety, the word safety, and especially I know the safety officers, when they do their checks or when they do their inspections, it's just to also form part of awareness. But yeah, the fear is still there. And with training interventions like our induction, we like to phase in or easily ease employees with the word safety, the importance of it, what does it mean? And throughout the years, we also involved their families in these safety and safety campaigns. So yeah, first of all, the importance of safety training is to reduce workplace incidents and accidents and injuries. So throughout the years, we've had horrible incidents happen over the years, and then DMR rocks up at the mines. We do inquiries, and then we need to learn from the investigations. So what normally happens, out of these investigations that happens, we put a couple of stuff in place, which also entails training. So we will normally do awareness training again, especially relating to the incident that happened, learning points. We will have question and answer sessions where the employees will have opportunity to engage with us. So we normally partner with safety on these campaigns. Promote culture and safety. So yeah, behavior is also a big issue. You just have those employees that's very nonchalant regards to training, regards to safety. You can give him all the material in the world, you can give him all the information. The attitude is, if the attitude doesn't change towards a proper safety culture, there's nothing you can do. So we have been trying, myself and my team over the years, especially mining training, to foster a good relationship with them in order to change the behavior towards safety. They must know the machine, the risks involved with this machine, and so on. Also, legal compliance with safety regulation, as I've just mentioned, DMR, are one of our biggest friends. So we try to comply with our utmost best to comply to regulations, train our employees to these regulations and make sure that they are safe. Then components of effective training. So we have a couple of components that we use in our training. Risk identification and assessment. So within our assessment processes, the learner would have to identify the risks involved in the certain task or with a certain equipment. That is very crucial. So if the employee can't indicate what's the risk involved with that component or with the task, it's a big no-no. You can't find that person competent. Targeted training, especially in a mining environment where a large difference of operations, tasks happen simultaneously. It is necessary to train individuals for the specific task. Doesn't help you take an employee and you give them a wide variety of learning, and that person needs to execute it with precision. It's impossible. So to break it down into subsections, test, see if it works, continuous PTOs to see that the person mastered that skill. Interactive practical training and methods. That is where our trainers need to be hands-on. Normally we do our theory sessions within the classroom with presentations, with models, with so we do classroom training, and then when the individual or the employee is sent out, our trainers normally goes out with the person. We do one-on-one coaching, making sure that person masters the skill. When the training officer is not available, we hand that person over to a coach. So we try that the person should not, the learner should never work alone. And that, I must say, is very successful. The knowledge, the momentum of gaining skill is very good. Regular refresher courses. We know over the years, legislation changed, new rules comes into place. So it is necessary for employees to do refresher courses, especially on safety, like our lockout codes. Induction programs need to be refreshed. The organization I'm currently working for, we do a full refresh induction again. Like on the different mines that I've also worked, you just get a shorter version. We don't do it here, and I must say it is, we can see the fruits of it. It is a long process, but the fruits are there. Continuous PTOs, I think I did mention that as well. So yeah. Then the methodologies, again, just a reiteration, on the job training, it is very crucial. To sit in a classroom, to just hear, sometimes the guys block out. We work with individuals ages from 18 years old up until 60. So yeah, you guys would know your concentration level from 40 plus isn't that good anymore. So the same with me. I'm a practical person. I would like to see, I would like to touch, I would like to hear. So the on-the-job training, 100%. So we focus a lot of our time as trainers on the job training. Classroom training, I've just mentioned it before. So in the classroom, we would do simulation is actually part of our classroom training. So we have a simulator on site, so we would do it. But as I say, the practical part is where you reap your most out of the individual. Then e-learning platforms. We're moving now to digitalization, getting the e-learning platforms where you have, I've just seen the other day, one of my colleagues are working on a animated video. It is now a couple of years, but yeah, it's quite fun and interesting if you put animation in your presentations and as well in the learning process. It's also flexible, self-paced. So some of, as I say, our learning styles are not exactly the same. I might be a slower learner than the next person. So it's self-paced. I take my time to understand. Nobody's rushing me as a facilitator would stand in front of the class rushing. So yeah, it is also a big winner nowadays for classroom training. Mentoring and coaching, I did mention that. As I say, it's a big winner, the mentoring and coaching. Then for continuous improvements, yeah, budget is always an issue. I don't want to mention it, but yeah, you just said it yourself. It is not going okay nowadays. We need to work with what we have. So digitalization, our simulators, VR, those are the things we really want to use, upgrades on them. So yeah, so in conclusion, that's what we do in the learning space regarding safety. I do feel it is important and necessary that safety is emphasized in the mining industry. Yeah, I don't know my time, but yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Don't worry, you didn't take up a lot of time. We still wanted to hear more. Maybe just a question from something you mentioned, right? Just as I was going through your profile, looking at your growth in your career from being an operator and moving all the way to training. What I want to ask is in terms of, when you are, like you said, when people see safety officers walk into the plant, for example, they panic. When was that mindset switch for you as a professional to say, instead of me looking at these people policing me, they're here to actually help me work safer? And also, I think the same thing comes in when you mentioned PJOs as well. People don't want to be observed when they're working, thinking that you will pick up something that they're doing wrong. But how do we then change the mindset to say they're doing this for me, to help me so I go home safe to my family?
Over the years, I've seen ugly pictures. Not pictures per se, but I saw serious incidents happening. I sat in very serious inquiries from a training perspective, in DMR inquiries, and it's not a nice sight. It's not a nice sight when my first encounter was, I was still very, very young. When my first inquiry was a colleague of mine, I just moved out of the plant into the training space. We worked together, and he got in an incident and his fingers were amputated. He was very, very young at that age. And to think of a 20-plus-year-old, 20, 21, 22-year-old already with half a hand, let's say that. That wasn't nice. So yeah, people have different perspectives of why we do it. With that, I really saw that it's so quick that you can lose your life, lose a limb when an incident happens, or you can hurt someone else. It is too quick that something can happen. So my mindset, I saw the real picture. And from there on, I advocated how important it is, especially when I do facilitation, how important it is that we need to work safely, to save yourself. We even have it in our Mine Health and Safety Act, Section 22 and 23, how we iterate it every time in our induction programs, the same in our training material. It is specified there. You need to look after yourself. You need to also, you're responsible to look after your co-worker. So yeah, I can go on days and days with the incidents that I sat in. And sometimes it's simple incidents. It's something that just happens because the guy, it slipped his mind, or he lose for a split second, he lost focus. But then it is serious. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Sharon. I think the fact that you highlighted the implication and made it more personal, that is very informative and very insightful. With that being said, thank you so much. It just, it gave me a bit of emotion. With that being said, I would like to then introduce our third panelist for the day, Jocelyn Anne Gilfillan, who is a leadership and change coach. So Jocelyn, who I call Jos, starting from the couple of days back, has a very strong background when it comes to coaching and training, where she has a Wayfinder Life Coach training from 2023, and then in 2016, executive coaching certification, and then 2012, she has a political and international studies bachelor's honors from Rhodes University. Jos has over a decade of experience in guiding organizations through transformative change. And she's a professional with a passion for coaching leaders to reshape their perspective and beliefs to implement successful change initiatives. Throughout her dynamic career, she has contributed her expertise and lent across a variety of industries, which include construction, logistics, farming, NGOs, government, mining, and also organized labor, which is what we'll be looking into right now. Through this experience, she has developed a fascination with diversity and transformation, and steadfast dedication to contributing to an integrated, successful South Africa, whereby labor and business work together to solve problems. Her commitment to facilitating meaningful transformation has allowed her to assist clients in navigating complex situations throughout change processes. She is a change catalyst and specializes in not only navigating structural intricacies of change, but also she sits on the realm of shifting these different kinds of mindsets. And her unique approach involves meeting leaders where they are and coach them through how to embrace the change that comes in different organizations. Today, Jos will be talking to us Today, Joss will be talking to us about the collaborative efforts that come into the safety culture among the mining companies, and also looking at the stakeholders that are involved, such as the DMRE as well as organized labor. Over to you, Joss.
Thank you. I think I can't say much on the DMRE, but when it comes to organized labor, what I've seen in the various industries and organizations that I've worked with is that the stronger the union, the safer the workplace. And when I say the stronger the union, I don't mean the more volatile and more body strength behind the union. I mean, when the union is taken seriously as joint leaders in the organization, as we're here to speak on behalf of workers and problem solve, and also have eyes on the shop floor. I mean, the shop floor in your line structures. My mining vocabulary is a bit old. So what's interesting when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking trade unionism was born out of making the workplace safer, is that it became a time in labor, in the history of employment, where it wasn't acceptable to be hurt at work. I mean, it isn't acceptable, but there's a massive, there's law behind it. If someone, I mean, when you speak about budgets or priorities of leadership, or your business will be shut down if workers are being harmed. And it's not acceptable for anyone to go home with no fingers, no limbs, and as much needs to be put in place to prevent that.
Oh, Joss, somehow you ended up getting muted. Yeah.
I muted myself. I hope that doesn't mean my point is lame. I mean, it might be. But so in safety investigations, so when there's a disciplinary process or a safety investigation happening, where I've seen unions really strive forward, which reinforces what Lindy and Sharon were saying, is that you can't get in trouble if something wasn't safe. And the union is a powerful advocate for that, is company, listen to what went wrong. Do we punish the employee for slipping up? Or do we make sure that they have the right skills to ensure this doesn't happen again? What needs to happen? What procedures? And by procedures, I don't mean another checklist, but what actual measures need to be put in place so that the workplace gets safe? And I've seen unions and shop stewards really advocate for employees on this in terms of making sure there wasn't a near miss where everyone should be punished or disciplined, because that isn't going to work. The punitive way is not the way in order to change and reinforce that. I've also seen a lot of organized labor, and I realized that WiMSA has also done a lot of sorting out appropriate PPE and safety gear for employees. Sometimes the people buying the PPE or purchasing it don't actually understand the requirement. Like, is it possible to do the work with those gloves, or having a female body, or having a body that's differently shaped? And the union, in my experience, really works well with holding, especially now, recently in the last few years, in changing that, not standardized for everyone. And I also, how do I phrase this? The safety structures in mines, how I understand them, as well as the union structures, there's a big overlap where it's really pertinent that organized labor is working alongside leadership. But I like to say that organized labor, it's not having a problem. They're not the enemy. You're working towards a solution. So if safety is the problem in front of you, organized labor leaders, the DMRE, the training department, organizations like AMBER are all working together for the same result. And it's something that it's the human part of work, which you can't turn your back on. I think that's all I have to say on this matter.
Thank you for that, Jos. Maybe I think this is probably the right time to invite everyone into a discussion, right? And so that at least we explore a bit more and we get more out of this. Starting with you, Jos, since you're already here. Maybe my question would then be in terms of the organized labor, to say, what are some of the measures that they've put in place that you have seen while you're working closely with them that have transformed the safety space? Maybe you can share a case study with us. You can share maybe a scenario that you once worked on, or a story that will give an idea to say, actually, we are not just paying unions our membership fees and there's nothing that they're actually doing for us, but we're actually hoping that out of this we'll get a few examples from that.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking me of what is an example of where the union really advocated for employee safety. Okay, my example's not in mining. Is that okay? But it was with 𝗵SA. 𝗵SA, I'm not going to name the company, but 𝗵SA's in mining. So the 𝗵SA shop steward, this organization didn't have safety reps. So the way in which they conducted safety, there would be a safety incident and then there would be a big investigation as to why the safety incident happened. And it had to do with checklists. So the checklists were filled in, the procedure had been followed, and this is where, if I understood what Sharon was saying, is that a slip of you cannot pay attention for 1 second and then you're in danger. And actually the safest way to work in the workplace is to pay attention all day, which we all know as humans is not possible. And the safety incident, it was a near miss. No one was hurt. Sorry, I'm getting my facts straight, all wrong. But what the shop steward was able to do in that safety investigation was show the company where it would have been a dismissible offence. The employee fell off a structure or fell from a structure. It wasn't very high. That it was a human error. So I'm so sorry. I'm giving you a terrible example because I don't remember all the facts. But the way in which I saw the shop steward advocate for the employee was, this is a human being who slipped up. He didn't break a law. He made a mistake. And now we need to get better grip on the landing he was on. or whatever it is. I'm going to stop here because I can't remember the story.
No, that's okay, Jos. I think from what I got from your explanation is that there was advocacy, so they advocated for the employee. So, like with what I've mentioned when I phrased my question to say, are union members just paying the fees for the sake of paying fees? What I got is that they're not just paying for the sake of paying. There is advocacy that comes with it. There is someone who is in your corner that comes with it. With that being said, maybe back to you, Sharon, is to say, from the story that you mentioned earlier on, in terms of your colleague, I'm gonna use that as an example, in terms of your colleague losing a part of their hand, to say, after that, did you see a quick response in terms of changes in procedure, or was it a process that was a bit slow in terms of implementing the change in terms of safety? How long was the turnaround time? How did that work? Was the employee taken care of in that space, or was the blame put on them? How did the organization come into the party and assist them? If you can answer that for us, please.
Well, yeah, it was a couple of years back, so I might also have some of my facts a little bit wrong. What I must say, in my opinion, and I'm not talking about the DMRE inquiry, what the findings were, but in my view, it was all a mindset situation. He lost focus. There was once a mention, it wasn't formally mentioned. You know, if an incident occurs, like a amputation or partly amputation, rent mutual pays out. So some of the guys just saw the monetary value. What is going to get paid out? He must be happy. He mustn't moan. He's going to be financially sorted out. And it's not from a management perspective. It was the employees on the ground that made those type of comments. The turnaround is very slow, and I've seen it throughout the years. Management can easily, I'm now part of management, and I see now both sides. When I was an operator and when I'm now in management, and I can see both sides. Management will always get up, implement, stop for safety, do all these nice things, but it's the individual. It's the individual that needs to make the change. And it's difficult to measure that change because the next incident won't necessarily happen to the same person. It will happen to someone else in a different section, more or less the same incident. So to answer you, yes, support was given to the employee. He went through the mine's medical process. I can recall the specialist visits were on the account of the mine. So yeah, the management did assist that guy 100%. Yeah, guys always see that when there's an inquiry, that you're going to be blamed. Someone mentioned, I don't know if it was Jocelyn or Lindy that mentioned that we need to inquire, we need to see what went wrong. So if the difficult questions are going to be asked. Did you do your risk assessment? Did you do your 5 steps to safety? Did you observe? Did you do this and that and this? And sometimes the guys see it as very, not offensive, but they try to shield themselves. They don't even listen to the question. They just start blocking themselves. So, or try to hide by telling the truth. So yeah, it is always, in all inquiries, it's always a difficult process. Doesn't matter how serious the incident. It can be a property damage. But yeah, I feel personally it's a mindset thing. It is difficult to measure it, to see the turnaround. There is example. I don't know if Lindy will agree with me in a safety perspective. Throughout January to December, you will have there's times in the years where you have influxes of incidents happening, and there will be certain times in the year where you will have one incident happening in a month. And especially where we get our high, it's during our December and Easter holidays, or so you lose focus. You need to focus on buying gifts and food and so on for December. So in a nutshell, turnaround time, I can't say.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was very informative. Maybe to you, Lindy, as well, taking from what Sharon just mentioned. Will you please just share with us a success story on your side, where you've seen safety being implemented and it worked out very well, and it also changed the culture of the organization as well?
Okay, perfect. I will go into that. I just wanted to just carry on with what Sharon was saying about the December and the influx of incidents. So something I always want us to always be mindful of is sometimes it's so quick to blame the person, and there's this model and this way of thought that comes essentially from like the 1910s, where it goes down to human error and our ancestry and this thinking about what we were doing. And sometimes that's not actually it's not always the case. It's not about this distraction. Sometimes it's about the pressure of work. So in December, you often find with shutdowns, there's a lot of management pressure, target pressure. And but the most important thing is we need to remember that these are humans that are working in these very complex systems, and a mine in particular, getting to and from the mine, to and from factories. There's a lot that goes into an everyday, and at the time, whenever people make a decision, it makes sense at that moment in time. And that's why there's a lot of push, especially internationally, when they're doing investigations, to bring what they call a learning team. So there's quite a lot of research on this, and my colleague Matthew is better at speaking about this than me, but one of the big things is that you're constantly looking to learn what happened, what went wrong. Because sometimes what happens on a good day and a bad day, it's the exact same procedure. So whether you're in a hospital, on a mine, or driving a cruise ship, those procedures are usually the same, and you usually do the same thing. So it's very important to just remember that it's sometimes quite easy to just blame the person and their distraction, where actually it's more about the system in which we work. So sometimes it seems like an obvious story, but it's actually a lot bigger about the bigger system. So internationally, especially in New Zealand and Australia, if you have a big accident or something, you can pay a fine, or you can do a learning team and share that knowledge with industry. So I just think the world is moving into a much more learning mindset. I know the Minerals Council are also looking at a lot of these new concepts. So I think we are moving, but as a continent, we are very slow in adopting this learning behavior. And it's, I think, a lot to do with our history of punishment and blame and all of those type of things, which can make it quite volatile and a very complex place to work. Because blame, sometimes they say, is emotionally important but not operationally important, and it's that legacy of what happened to your peer who did report or did hurt their hand, or all of that type of punishment. So we live with quite a lot of that legacy, which if we're wanting to address, we have to have those tough conversations and really see positivity and a change of leadership and a change of behavior, and change the way we view the unions if we really are wanting to learn from these errors and make it a much safer place. So in terms of that, that's just off of that. But in terms of where I've seen things work really well, for me, that's when we've worked on campaigns that include people. So we design things. We don't sit up here as the creative head office or the HR team or the marketing team or the training team and just create something in isolation. So the most successful projects we've been on are ones that we introduce design thinking workshops to, and we include frontline workers into that process. And the reason we do this is off a legacy story that wasn't in a project I was involved in. It was long before we even had the idea for Amber. It was as I started my career very, very early on in mining. And I went on a trip with one of the consultants I was working with. And they were just telling me a story about a campaign that they'd spent a lot of money on. And the campaign had to do with a chameleon. And it was all about having this chameleon, and you must be quick and agile and adapt with the changes because the business is changing, and we always know business is always changing, mining's always changing, the commodity price is always up and down. So they thought, okay, well, this little chameleon mascot's going to be a great metaphor to inspire that change. You know, we wanted to reach the hearts and minds. And as soon as they launched this campaign, had printed all the merch, as soon as it got into the hands of the host community, they were like, we don't want that. We don't want this chameleon. Like, the chameleon in this community was seen as a distrusting thing. There was a lot of stories around a chameleon is you must never trust it because it changes its mind. And it was all based on a story within that region about losing crops. And the message came from the chameleon. So this was just a very simple, what we call semiotic. So semiotic is the visual, and how this visual just kind of destroyed the culture. So all the goals and objectives they'd put in wanting to have it, the whole campaign backfired. So that for me has been a real catalyst and a real changing moment, even though I had nothing to do with the chameleon. Every time I see a chameleon, I do think of the story, but it was always about using the lessons of that to, when you're creating something, whether it, and especially if it's about campaigning and change, include those workers. So campaigns we've had union representation, female representation, people from the environmental teams. And if you give people the opportunity to talk and brainstorming, creative, they might not be able to make the beautiful picture at the end, which is fine. Like, someone else can do that. Now AI can do that for us. But it's about including those voices. And those for me have been the most successful campaigns. So we've had, and as well, ones that are conceptually quite strong. So we've worked with one where it was around, I mean, a lot of our projects are under NDA, so I'm going to kind of like talk around them a little bit. But it's, if you get given a metaphor and a symbol, how do you push that? How do you expand it? And that's often where we coach our teams and coach our clients. Like, we have to understand that metaphor, understand its meaning. And for me, the ones that have the most collaboration, yes, it's a much slower process, but that's when the buy-in's there. That's when people really want to be part of the project and really see the change, because they feel it's their project. They just had a creative person essentially articulated for them, but they're part of that journey. So there's a really beautiful design thinking model, which starts with you first empathize. So you can just Google design thinking model if you want to see the picture, but you start with empathy. And for me, that's always an important part of any project or any bit of safety or any bit of training that we're going to do, is start, what is the main thing? So people could be having trauma. They may have had this, especially with the awareness training after an incident, is you need to start from a place of empathy. Just having scare tactics and showing people with their arms chopped off is not necessarily going to encourage change. There's a lot of research around using scare tactics, and it's more about big picture thinking, understanding the nuances, the lessons, and making it a much more human process. Then you define the project. So every good project will have its definitions, and it can't achieve everything. So sometimes it could just be it's just about awareness. And then you ideate and get information and ideas from all different places, different sources, different people that are using in the system, in the product, and get their perspectives. And then always do a small prototype, test it before we launch a chameleon, and then constantly test and refine. So that design thinking model is the ethos of, I believe, my whole life, is always feel first, respond, test, small test, refine. And if we use that approach with how we tweaking safety comms, tweaking our training, tweaking our relationships, and getting leadership on board. I know we didn't really talk much about the leadership role today, but yeah, getting all stakeholders involved at all different points, just their opinions, and giving them the opportunity to speak can really change a culture, can really transform the way the minds are working.
Well, thank you so much, Lindy. With that being said, I like how you know, when we're talking about the feeling and the emotion, that speaks mostly to women. We are what most people would say emotional beings. And that leads me to the question that we're getting from the audience. And the question says, as panelists, so this is to all of you, to say, do you believe that there has been good strides for including women within the mining, within the safety culture of today, with inclusion of decision-making and promotion thereof? So maybe you'll take that, Lindy, followed by Joss, and then Sharon.
I think there has been a lot of positives. I think many women have been included if I look at the safety professionals that we deal with, most of them are quite diverse teams. So we've got different races, different demographics, like different age, so from age to race to gender. So I do believe safety is one of the places that is quite inclusive, and they do tackle all types of problems. So I think there has been a lot of progress. Obviously, there's progress we can all still make and make it better and more inclusive, but I do believe women have been included. And in my experience, if they aren't included, we often advocate for them to be brought in, for there to be that female representation. So I think even in our service providers who realize the agenda and put women in the heart of their businesses and their operations, we're all advocating for the same goal. If we don't see it, we can often, well, I know I certainly do, I often ask for women to be brought into the thinking sessions. And if we get given a WIM project, I often ask for men to be included, so that we do have different perspectives and can make good choices.
Well, thank you so much, Lindy. Jos, from your side?
I honestly can't speak directly to mining, but I do think that it's becoming more acceptable for women to be in the room. But the truth is, in organized labor spaces, definitely a minority. And I think that in terms of leadership and creating change, especially safe change with empathy, there's such a space for women. So I don't have experience in the mines of right now, but the conversation around safety, that's a space for, I mean, if you go to communities and you go to homes, who's advocating for safety? Just have a look out your window at your boys, if you have boys. So, yeah, I think there's a space that needs women. So, WiMSA.
Advocacy. Sharon?
Yeah, in the mining space, I would say women have established their space already. We are here, we are present. So yeah, we're leading. So yes.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm sure the audience got that there's still more space, but women are in the space. With that being said, if there are still more questions, please send them through. But right now, I'd like to thank the panelists from my side. And it gives me great pleasure to now introduce Chantal Gray, who is the MD of our partner and sponsor, SafetyCloud, who will be sharing some brief insights on SafetyClouds and assisting me further facilitating the Q&A session on this portion of the program. So Chantal is responsible for implementing strategic plans, encouraging creative thinking, spearheading effective communication with stakeholders, and driving organizational success. Previously, she served as MD at Nosa Logistics and Yonke Education and Training Solutions, which was responsible for transport and warehousing risk management training solutions. Over to you, Chantal.
Thank you so much, Nseko, and to the team at WiMSA for the opportunity to collaborate, and also to our panelists for the fantastic insights provided in today's discussions. We're really looking forward to the balance of our webinar series and sharing the stage with incredible women who are as passionate about safety as what we are. And this afternoon's topics of enhancing safety culture in mining operations is something that's very close to our hearts. And it speaks directly to our mission of making the world a safer place. Today, we've worked in partnership with more than 20,000 companies and assisted them to firmly drive cultures of safety within their workspaces. This partnership has allowed us to ensure that we've assisted in mitigating risk within these environments, as well as ensuring that employees are able to return home safely to their families and communities at the end of the day. And I can see this is a message that the panelists have been driving home as well. And we do this through offering our suite of health and safety solutions, ranging from training to auditing to consulting, to ensure that we help build our clients to enhance and maintain safety cultures within their own organizations. At this point, I just want to add to the panelists is that we're well aware of the number of women that the number of women in the mining sector has increased from 3% in 2002 to 15% in 2023. And these are according to the stats from the Minerals Council of South Africa. So we can see that progress is still slow, and we are not seeing as many women as what we'd like to, or the growth being as exponential as what we believe it should be in this space. We also know that safety persists as a major concern, especially for women working underground who face the risks like sexual harassment, violence from male colleagues, illegal miners, as well as the harsh conditions underground, which only makes the safety for women worse. However, on a positive note, we can see that the industry has made significant progress in addressing these safety concerns. And thanks to the Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, the new guidelines under the Mine Health and Safety Act, there are comprehensive guidelines that form part of a broader initiative to tackle gender-based violence and femicide, as well as other safety challenges that women are constantly facing in this industry. These new guidelines mandate advanced surveillance systems to monitor and report incidents of harassment and violence, as well as regulate training sessions on gender sensitivity, workplace harassment, and safety protocols, most of which are way overdue but widely welcomed by the industry. Last year, we also saw the introduction of new guidelines for the mandatory code of practice for selecting and providing PPE specifically for women in mining. And this has been widely welcomed throughout the industry. So although we can see that there certainly have been shifts for safety for women in mining, as always, there is always a lot more that can be done. And I'd like to take this opportunity to commend WiMSA for leading the role and for leading the role it is playing in placing these issues at the forefront in the sector. But with that said, I'd like to move to the audience to see if there are any more questions that have come up during the session, and I'll ask Nsako to join us again in driving this portion of the program.
Thank you so much, Chantal. The question that we have now is for Sharon. So the question says, do you believe that digital training will play a bigger role, especially with virtual reality becoming bigger? Will be the main way to go in the future? Will the cost be seen as a necessary burden to ensure safety training keeps getting better? This is for you, Sharon.
Okay, yeah. To go with virtual training is a big yes. I'm advocating that. I can write essays on it. So yes, it helps a lot. As I've seen with the simulator training, you put yourself in, you're not in the workplace, but for a moment you can put yourself in the mining environment or the work environment, let's say that. So yes, it is a yes, definitely. Cost, it is currently a big issue. I've spoken to our sister mines, I've spoken to different mines, it is an issue. So for now, it's slowly ramping up. I've seen great models. I could see the impact it can have on the mining industry, especially also assisting our engineers. We can check, for example, fuel consumption. How many times a machine operator has been using the brake failure test and so on. So yeah, the technology is there. The technology can help us a lot. But yeah, on the other side, finances, for now, it's an issue, yeah.
It looks like we're not going to run away from the finance part of things. A question for Jos, it's to say, what role does leadership play in creating a culture of safety?
Well, I mean, a massive role. And leaders, culture is created by leaders, or the shaping of culture is created by leaders. So if an organization wants any element of safety to change, improve, get better, it has to be driven by and shaped by leaders, and all leaders, female leaders, organized labor, and the leaders of the organization. Without it, you won't change anything.
Yeah. Thank you, Jos. Maybe coming back to you, Chantal, for you to maybe add on to this, to say what do you think the role of leadership is when it comes to safety culture? I know I'm bringing you in.
That's no problem. Yeah, I think it's really, really important. I think what people within the organization need to see is they need to see that safety is driven from the top. You know, a lot of the time when one looks at the duties of top management, it's about driving the business forward. It's about making profits. It's about ensuring businesses can expand. And I don't think one puts the role of health and safety in the same light as that as the top executives. Yet what we need to be seeing is that the safety of our people is what it is that is going to be driving the business forward. And without them, and should that safety culture not be driven from the top, and there is an incident or an accident or a fatality, what does that impact have on moving the business forward? What impact does that have on the brand? What impact does that have on the communities? What impact does that have on the motivation of your employees to work, properly? So I think it's really, really important that it is up to the executives to drive the culture of safety down and to ensure that it is implemented, to ensure that safety is not seen as a tick box exercise, to ensure that safety is inbred from every single level in the business, and that it is every single's responsibility to make the world a safer place and to ensure that our workers and our employees get home safely to their families and their communities at the end of the day. And if people within the organization are not seeing the leaders behaving in that way, they themselves will replicate that behavior. So to drive the behavior downwards, the leaders and the executives have to behave in the same way that we want to see our organizations behaving.
Maybe to add to that, right? You can respond first and then followed by Lindy, is to say, now that you have leadership in place, how do they then track the progress towards their safety goals? How do they track that progress now that they've implemented and they've initiated the process?
So I think, that is where safety systems really come into play, and making sure that everybody is trained accordingly, and keeping track of where people are trained, how people are trained, identifying gap audits, identifying where the high risk elements are, making sure that people who are entering those elements are trained regularly, are kept up to date on legislation, what is required, and to make sure that we are using the most up-to-date training methods to keep people in line. And I think what's also important is making sure that the executives are trained around what is required in terms of the act, that everybody understands, what is it that we have to do collectively to ensure that we are creating safer working environments for all, and ensuring that we have effective management systems to monitor and measure that is being done. I don't know if Jos or Sharon or Lindy want to add to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to add to that. Yeah, and I think it's critical that we have our leadership engaged and taking part. And what you mentioned about the goals is something that's very much built into our business. Is every time we run a campaign, it's to always set the baseline, set the goals, and measure that. And it's what's quite interesting with some of our clients, and not really in mining, but in other sectors as well, is just to get them to align on the safety goals has been one of our biggest hurdles in onboarding on our software, is to just get people to say, what does success look like for us? And for me, we've spent a lot of time trying to refine that to make it a seamless process. But the leaders can know everything about the act. They can know they've got the 16.2 and they've got the responsibility and the fines, but it's all down to the way they act and building that trust. So one thing I often hear on the ground is, so the two big things that are very practical is about entering the gate. So sometimes the leaders go in through a different entrance and they don't blow at the gate. So then it creates this bit, and it's like a fundamental thing. And it's like, why did they get to walk through there, but I've got to walk through here and blow at the gate? So that's just one small practical tiny thing, is everyone goes through the same gate. There shouldn't be a different route in. And then the other thing is when something has been budgeted for and there is an activation. So I'll talk about our peers in industrial theatre. They come on, they do it, and it's great, and the participation's there. And then the leadership team all stand in the back, or they're like having a smoke or on their phones or checking their mail, and that people are watching you. We've done safety days and you say, okay, so that makes that them and us. And as a leader, you have to be so mindful of what you're doing, how you're standing, if you're taking an email during, if you're checking your phone, and my worst at the moment is checking your bloody watch. So it's like you're in the middle of the session, you're in this thing, and people can pick up on that, and we can train them and make them sign whatever we want. But if their body language and their behavior and their attitude, which we all have covered, is not seeing safety as a priority, that will create that culture. And that's when people start to hide things and change it. But if you're a leader and you have a good example and you're honest and you say, I don't know, please help me, please learn, I'm part of it, I'm going to take part in the industrial theatre, I'm going to not check my watch every 2 minutes. Those are the things that speak louder than words. So yeah, and just if any one of your team do have people going through the gate, please it's such a small, simple thing. Just make sure everyone goes through has the same treatment on arrival at work.
Sure, and I think also to add to that, it's just about 100% collaborative safety. It's about having top management collaborating with just the people in the business around safety, and I think walking the walk and talking the talk. That is what we want to be able to see from top management, bringing that kind of culture into each organization.
And a beautiful, sorry, one more thing for me, just a beautiful thing that we were shared by Lay when we did that Canadian research trip. So there's a lady called 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 who's fantastic. If anyone has budget, please bring her down. But she's wonderful. And one of the big things she said is, it's like, you might not be the person to deliver the message, and the leader might not be that person. But as long as that message gets delivered, that's the important thing. So it's about finding those everyday leaders as well, who are in our front lines. It's the leader in the team. They might not be the shift boss, but they can still be a leader, and they can still impact positive change. So leadership, you don't need to have a C-suite title. You don't have to be the VP of the mine. You can be an everyday leader and leading and protecting your brother's keeper, sister's keeper. And I think it's important that we all encourage that. You don't have to have the title to be a leader in safety.
Thank you so much. Maybe to follow on to that, Lindy, before you go, it's to say, what are some of the key metrics that can be used to assess safety performance? Just a few that you can think of right now.
Now, this one's always a hot debate, as well as, like, what do we call safety culture? So a lot of people do track the lagging indicators, so like the LTIs, things like that, which have a place and everything, but that's not the be all and end all. There's a lot of other things we can track. So tracking our KPIs, is KPI something for everyone? What are our goals? How close are we to those goals? What are we learning? So there's all different ways to track that, but you also don't want to measure stuff just for the sake of it being measured. And culture is a tricky one, because sometimes it's just felt, but we do try and have metrics in creating those baselines. So yeah, I think it's just being proactive to constantly be learning. And that's also part of that design thinking ethos, is just learn, track, what are you doing, refining it, and follow the industry standards, but also create ones that make sense for your own organization. It's things like how many people have resigned, how many sick days. I mean, if people are leaving your mine or leaving your workplace for different jobs, like that's also an indicator of if it's a good place to work or not.
Thank you so much, Lindy, for that. From my side, I'd like to stop here and hand over back to Chantal. But before I can do that, we will still be taking more of your questions. If you'd like, you can email them to us at info.wimsa.org.za. And then remember that after the session, in a couple of days, the session will be uploaded online. So thank you so much from my side, and thank you so much from the panel. Over to you, Chantal.
Thank you so much. And second, just one more.
Did Chantal freeze just for me?
Chantal?
Thing is,
Oh, yes. Chantal, welcome back. We missed you for a moment today.
I'm not sure where I was. So I just say, if we can all leave here just knowing that safety is everybody's responsibility. We all have our role to play and we can all have an impact. And to Lindy's point, if we're all leaders, in our own rights, that is how we're going to make the biggest impact in the world of safety. But thank you so much to everybody for all your questions and contributions toward today's important discussions. And just a big thank you to WiMSA once again for the partnership. And to our speakers for sharing their insights and their expertise with us today. It has been greatly appreciated. To everybody else, just please sign up for our upcoming webinars in the series. Keep an eye out on social media and emails from WiMSA. We'd be very, very happy and looking forward to collaborating with you all again. And from us, be well, stay safe, and until next time, goodbye.
Bye, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.